Hi, Carl. Hi, everyone.
Hi, Noemi.
Hi.
Carl.
You're muted, Carl.
Well, it took me 3 tries.
Third time's a charm, right?
Yeah. Hi, everybody.
Hi.
Hey guys. Kathy, how to make me host. I think it might be if you tap on participants and then you see me on the right, I think you can tap the 3 buttons and it might let you do that. It looks like it's Carrie, not Kathy. Sorry. I'm responding to Kathy, who's not here.
Hello, Isaac.
Hello, how's everyone?
Hello.
How's it going, Carl?
Good, bud. How you doing?
Doing great. Good to see everybody.
I'll need access to share once it's time to start my update as well. So, Carrie, if you can hear me, please provide access.
It's actually Kathy logged in as Carrie and she doesn't have
Oh,
audio.
that's right.
So-
That's right. Okay.
So I'm
Please, Kathy.
texting her.
Thank you.
Hello, everybody.
Hi.
Hey,
Hi,
Karen.
Karen.
Yay,
Long time.
Stacy. Woo. And Marianne.
That's
Getting
right.
close. Hey, everyone. Vote, 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 guys.
Gosh, I feel like I haven't seen you guys in ages.
You haven't.
Right. It's been a long time.
No, I mean, I'm making you a co-host.
Okay.
Oh, gosh, Steve, I realized I forgot to print the agenda out.
You're
Might have to-
fired.
I'll put it up on the screen so everybody can see it.
Great. Sorry about that. I usually remember
Okay.
that one.
It used to matter when we were in, physically in one spot.
I've read it twice before, so I kind of remember what's there, but this would be helpful.
So here's the meat of it, and I can kind of toggle back and forth,
Right.
sharing that and not. Carl, I'm going to recommend that we, well, for a very obvious reason, I don't have the minutes from our last meeting. So I'm going to recommend that we defer that to the next meeting and
Ye-
approve.
Good, because
whatever's
I didn't see any, so yes, I was going to do that
Wow.
anyway. We'll do that
I can tell you why you didn't see them.
because they weren't there in the email.
Right. But we'll get that for our next one. I mean, the focus of this meeting is a little different anyway.
We can do 2 meetings worth of agenda of minutes at the next one for sure. Let's see. How many folks do we have here now? I'm looking at 1, 2. 3, 4. All right, we do have a quorum. That's great. Hi, Lisa. Hi, Stacy.
Hello.
And Karen and Marianne. Great. Let's give it another minute or so, see if any other members show up, and then we'll get rolling.
Sounds good.
Yeah, it's 4:34. I'll wait another minute and then we'll go. Well, it is good to see everybody. It's been a few months.
Sure
Yeah,
is.
it has.
Yeah, we have lots to share. So let's go ahead and let's call this meeting to order. And we move into chair communications. I don't have anything specifically to share at this moment. After we get through some of the staff reports and what's going on, then we'll discuss a little more. Steve, is there anything you want to share at this moment?
Just that the focus of this meeting is really to talk about the entitlements issues with the high school. We're not going to have a lot that isn't related to that. You'll see that there's some things missing. It's not because we're removing them permanently from the agenda, like our environmental updates. Those will continue. It's just this meeting is going to be very focused on one thing. And Carl and Craig and I have I think communicated quite a bit over the last several months about where we are on this project. We're at the point where we need the whole committee to be not just be aware, but also be involved in our response going forward. So Carl or Craig, if you have anything to add to that before we get into it, now is a good time.
No, I think we got to get into it to talk about
Okay.
what
Yeah.
it is.
Agreed. Yeah, we're giving everybody an update where we are, where we're going, and what's happening. So here we go. Why don't we jump right into item 4, which is the Malibu Campus Plan Phase 1. And Noemi, I think you're on.
Yeah, we'll ask Noemi to give us a brief update on the project and its status, and then we can get into the meat of the issue.
Yes. If I can share, please. I'll need you to
You're
stop sharing.
Oh, well, that's harder to do. Hold on. Did I do
Okay,
it?
here we go. Yes, you did. Just give me a second.
Got it nailed.
Let me see. Slideshow. Okay, are you guys able to see full screen the
Yes,
presentation?
yes,
Wonderful.
yes.
Okay, thank you. So as Steve indicated, it's been a while since we met, so I will try to give you a high-level overview of the overall project. I'm going to start with a quick update of where we are with DSA approval. Then I'll jump into increment 1. As you know, the project was divided into 2 increments. Increment 1 is the decommissioning of the former Juan Carrillo Elementary School campus. Then I'll dive into increment 2, which is the phase 1 new high school project, the construction of that. Then lastly, we'll cover entitlements and schedule. So with that, let me move your faces out of here because I can't see my full screen. Close that. Okay. So plans and specifications for increment 1, those were submitted to DSA on November 24th of last year. They were approved on February 21st of this year. And basically what DSA looked at is demolition, rough grading, and underground utilities, which was the package that encompassed increment 1. They don't care to see abatement, even though technically abatement is part of increment 1. Increment 2, which is construction of the new high school, those plans were submitted to DSA on January 12th of 22. We started to see comments for various disciplines starting mid-July. Initially, we were hoping to get them even earlier since June, but we started to see some delays in the responses, but only a few weeks later. We were able to receive DSA approval just last month on the 20th. So we have a complete set of DSA approved plans and specifications. So for all intents and purposes, we're ready to hit the ground running.
Noemi, I'm going to interrupt you
Yes.
here.
Yes,
Noemi's
please do.
Noemi's underselling this a little bit. This is a $100 million project, and it was in DSA and out in 9
months.
a little over 9 months, which is great. I mean, that's a really good turnaround for a project of this scale. It's what we were anticipating I should also say it's what we told you we were going to do. You know, our plan was get this project approved so that we could start on November 1st. That was the original plan to way back when. And excuse me, and the project is approved and ready to start and could have started November 1st, which incidentally was yesterday.
Right, which I'll get
so-
into all of that in the next slide.
Right, but I want to commend Noemi and our design team for meeting that commitment, which at the time was relatively aggressive. I think our team on this side of it really did a great job and got it done. So thank you, Noemi, for doing that.
Oh, you're welcome. It's very true. It was record time, really, for this size of a project. It was definitely completed in record time. We'll move on to decommissioning. I'm gonna dive in more into the overall schedule. As Steve indicated, the original intent of increment 1 was to start the project on June 1st. And to be completed by October 31st so that we can take advantage of the summer months to try to abate the buildings and demolish the majority of the structures while students were out for the summer. Unfortunately, we were not able to start on June 1st, but I'll get to the rest of the dates in just a second. And I'll address increment 2 start date as well in just a minute. So while we were still working with the city on trying to get the CDP approved, we went ahead and proceeded as business as usual on our end so that we can try to be ready just in case we were successful in getting the city to expedite the review of CDP for phase 1. We put the project out to bid in February 28th. We received bids on the 24th. We awarded contracts on May 19th. And we were working very diligently with CW Driver, with all of the subcontractors that bid the project so that they can hold their prices. Because as you know, most contractors will only hold their bids for 30 days. And we were able to convince them to hold them a little longer while we were trying to work out a realistic timeline with the city. In the meantime, we were also seeing that we were not getting anywhere really with the city in terms of expediting the review of CDP for phase 1. We started to work a different angle. We were asking them to separate the CDP, the decommissioning portion, which is the abatement, the demolition, the rough grading, and the underground utilities portion only, and then to treat the construction as a separate CDP. However, we learned that according to the LIP, the local implementation plan, you cannot have 2 CDPs ongoing at the same time. We kept pushing, we didn't give up. And finally, the city came back and said, well, you guys work an angle, try to find a justification, feel free to work with your legal counsel, find whatever you can think of and present it to us and we'll consider it. Sure enough, we went back and forth, had a few meetings with the city, and we found a loophole where basically the planning director can potentially grant exceptions based on certain circumstances. And then we were able to take advantage of 2 particular circumstances. In this case, he granted, Richard Malika, the planning director, granted an exception to issue the demolition permit to separate the CDP because in this particular case, we have structures that have hazardous materials in them. And more importantly, it satisfies a public need. So it met these 2 conditions, basically, which is, again, when structures are in hazardous condition or when a proposed use satisfies a public need. We presented our justification and they granted the exception. The paperwork went to the Planning Commission for approval on July 18th. The only caveat is that no new development can occur as part of this decommissioning CDP, only abatement and demolition. We still continue to work with the city to continue to push our schedule, but we took that as a win just so that we can start with some of the work. Even though we had already lost the June 1st start date, we immediately mobilized. As you can see, the Planning Commission approved on July 18th. We had our contractors ready and mobilized by July 20th. Containment for the abatement to started right away on the 28th of July. We started abatement with the back of the campus. We focused on the NPR and all the buildings that are facing the Juan Cabrillo field and the bus barn, and we worked our way forward, basically. So abatement started, like I said, on the 4th of August. Demolition started about a week later. And we have now since abated and demolished all of the buildings on campus, at the Juan Cabrillo campus. The only thing that we're doing at this point, the last building to be demolished was Building A, which is the administration building at the front of the school. And we're just waiting for the test results for the soil below the slab. We know that we encounter some PCBs there, so we're just waiting for some additional tests. Once we expect to have those by the end of this week, and then we'll address the soil removal at that point. At this point, CW Driver, our contractor, is preparing to transition into the stormwater pollution prevention plan, which was also a requirement of the separation of this decommissioning CDP, which basically, since we have not received approval for the CDP for phase 1 for the construction of the new high school, we have to leave the site basically as a dirt lot with some mitigation measures to avoid any stormwater pollution. So our team, and like I said, is starting to transition into that process. They're going to be starting to work on that on November 18th. It's going to take approximately 4 weeks to complete. And we are currently waiting for the cost for this work as well, because this was not included in the original bid. And it's looking like it's going to be around $500,000 just for this work, which it's unfortunate because it's $500,000 that we could have saved had we been able to roll into the construction directly, or to at a minimum start with grading in the underground utilities as we had originally planned.
And just to add to that point, when we bifurcated the increment 0 CDP, the decommissioning CDP, which should have been allowed from the beginning, but when we did that, one of the requirements is naturally you can't leave a site that's going to flow, that's going to pollute stormwater, right? But the idea was we would be moving forward very quickly into the CDP approval, and we'd be able to still start construction in November. That has been delayed, and that's a big part of what we're talking about. That has been delayed by the city through its lengthy and repeated reviews and adding of requirements to the CDP, as well as the delay in getting the specific plan approved, which was a 5-month delay by itself. So that bottom line 500,000 is an additional cost that's resultant from the delays. Sorry,
In
Norma,
addition
go
to
ahead.
no, it's okay. Please jump in at any point. In addition to the monthly delay costs that we're looking at approximately $1 million per month that this project is delayed.
And the bifurcation in the first place, if I remember, was an unexpected hurdle too, right? Which,
Correct.
while it got us moving, it got us back to moving from where we thought we'd be moving, where we didn't think we were going to have to bifurcate. So that was, even though that created progress, that was still a delay. The other thing in terms of the listening of the committee, $1 million here and there, we're pushing up against the total amount of funds available for this project. So when you hear this cost $500,000, when you hear this cost $1 million, while it's always time to wince when you hear that, it is especially time to wince in the context of we have a limited amount of money to do this project with, and these delays and new requirements and the expense delays are leaning very hard on the amount of money we have available. So I just want to kind of have you listening with that frame of mind.
Right. And that's why I highlighted here the original schedule, because remember, if we're supposed to have completed everything, abatement, demolition, underground utility, rough grading, and underground utilities, all of that should have already been completed by now, and only abatement and demolition is done at this point. Moving on to increment 2, which is the construction of the new high school. As we've mentioned, that the original schedule for that was supposed to start November 1st, yesterday. It's the original schedule end date was July 31st, with the original staff and student occupancy was planned for August 2024, which I'll get into in a later slide, but there is no way we can meet this August 2024 occupancy date as originally planned at this point. We are still moving forward with putting the project out to bid because again, our concerns is the bidding climate. Every month that we delay this project, we're incurring $1 million. We expect to have bids next week on November 10th. We anticipate taking the month of a couple of weeks in November and the month of December to review the bids that are received, to review the guaranteed maximum price, and to take a recommendation to the board at the January 2023 board meeting. Now, while we might not be able to start construction and we risk contractors not holding their bids, we can potentially have them hold bids for maybe 30 days, 60 days, possibly. We certainly are going to be aggressively pushing for that, but it's certainly a risk. But at the same time, we decided to put it out to bid because we could start procuring a lot of the long lead items, because that it could also translate it to potential delays for the project. So we're doing everything on our end, in other words, just to be ready when the time comes.
And no, can I just
yes.
also say
Please.
that bid is going to have to come through this committee before it goes to the board too. So put that in the back of your head. Not that that's on
Will do.
the path of this conversation, but all you guys, you will see a bid before that January board meeting where the board is going to expect this committee to have made a recommendation with regard to that bid. And
Right.
that's really important with the whole Malibu sovereignty piece of this. So I just
Will do.
keep
Yes.
emphasizing that.
Absolutely. Construction start. Unfortunately, I can't give you an actual construction start date for phase 1. Unfortunately, our CDP application has yet to be completed or to be deemed complete. And I'll get into more of the timeline in just a minute. But even once the CDP application is in fact deemed complete, it still has to be scheduled and heard at a planning commission meeting. And even once the planning commission approves the CDP, no work can still commence until final California Coastal Commission approval is received on the specific plan. So it just creates a domino effect. We have met with the city, we met with Richard and Monica, and trying to come up with a path forward. Was somebody going to jump in?
Yeah, it's me.
Okay.
This next part, before you get to it, I want to point out, this is what the city has agreed to. You as a committee, I anticipate coming out of this meeting, will have a different request for the city, which is to immediately review and approve the story pole plan and allow the story poles to be installed like now. And I think your other request will be, based on conversations I've had with your chair and so forth, will be to ask the city to promptly schedule a special meeting for the Planning Commission in December, so that the story poles will be up for 30 days, and then the meeting will happen in December and get Planning Commission approval in December. So Noemi is now going to tell you what the city has, at least for now, agreed to. But
Well,
I
not even
believe that-
agreed, but we're tentatively targeting. They wouldn't commit to an actual date.
course,
but I
but-
mean, they gave us this date. They said, we're going to try,
Okay.
but
But-
they have not committed to this date.
So this is typical, just so everybody on this committee knows, this is typical what we've been hearing from the city. Well, we'll try to do that. And then of course it doesn't happen. So I think we, and I'm not trying, and Carl, you jump in here because I don't want to speak for you, but my feeling from what I've gotten from you is that's not good enough and we need to demand better.
Right. And
I'm
our
happy to
concern,
jump in.
go ahead, Carl.
I was going to let Noemi go here. I'm happy to jump in. I wanted to kind of pull this all back together for all the committee members as you guys get through this. There's a lot going on here. going back a little bit, we've had this schedule that we've had since, I think the first time I saw this timeline it was certainly the first quarter of 2019. First time I saw the schedule here, which always had our specific plan done in March of this year. And that's what we've had. Specific plan went to the city of Malibu. I believe it was November. Correct me if I'm wrong, Noemi,
December.
last year. December
December
last year,
21st.
with the expectation that specific plan would be completed with its Malibu portion of this by March. Understand that didn't get through Malibu until it was not finished until October. That's quite a bit difference. And knowing what Noemi and Steve have repeated here over and over again, this $1 million number, that's what it's costing us every month. There's a delay. It's costing us about $1 million. So the city delayed, Steve said 5 months, but my math tells me 7 months. The city delayed us specifically on the specific plan, which is now at Coastal Commission. We'd allowed some of that time, knowing that the Coastal Commission is an unknown, but now we had the unknown of the city, which was not expected. We're tremendously delayed on that, and now we don't really even know what the city's gonna do with the CDP. They're not making any commitments. So just know that we're waiting on the CDP, and we're waiting, and they keep pushing us back. I'm backing up just a little bit with the bifurcation of the two CDPs. What Noemi's discussing there is we had always received an administrative permit from the city to demolish buildings. We did that with building E, and then we did that with building D.
That's right. With the A and B
See-
building, building E and building D and building G.
So this was a change in city policy when they suddenly said, no, you cannot demolish Juan Cabrillo until, with an administrative permit, until the full CDP runs its process. So
That's correct.
that cost us several months, that change in plans, and also cost us quite a bit of money because the bifurcation, there's been all sorts of requirements installed on us, including this $500,000 in stormwater that we didn't expect. So the city has generated quite a few costs for us in the last 6 months, not to mention the delay in opening that we promised the kids and the people of Malibu of August of 24. And now we're looking at, which Noemi's going to get to in a minute, but we're looking at best case scenario, January 25. We may be looking at, if the city doesn't expedite this, we may be looking at August of 25, not January of 25. A full year delayed and at $1 million a month. That's what 10 to $15 million we're looking at. In addition, close to 15 additional costs, $1 million a month plus some of the bonus costs. So we're coming to everybody today and tonight to let you know this is where we are. Do know that all of us have been working on this diligently. Every moment I've been on calls with Craig and Steve almost daily for the last 6 months, trying to get this through the process. I've been on calls with almost every one of our city council members, all of our planning commissioners. I've met with a variety of them trying to get this through, but we're running into impediments that are completely unexpected. Our costs are going through the roof. We have some real questions about getting this project done at this point, and we need some input from all of you tonight. So I'm going to let Noemi finish up, and we'll come back to that.
Yeah, can I add one thing to that story too, Carl, if you don't mind, which is we have been, we love the city of Malibu. We're collaborative government agencies all acting on behalf of the residents and the kids of Malibu. And we have tried very hard to take at the word what the city is going to do and how it's going to be better next time and how it's going to be better next time. I think you'll all remember there was a meltdown in the January board meeting when we were trying to get something approved in front of the board, and the city came in and said, no, we don't, you can't do that. And we had this whole conversation about how the superintendent and the city manager would act as sort of referees and move the process forward. So we have had a number of points where we've said, okay, now it's going to work smoothly. Now it's going to work smoothly. And at some point, which is frankly now, we have to talk to you guys about, we cannot count on that anymore against a backdrop of we've lost a ton of time and we're pushing our financial limits. So, this has been a constant oversight and communication and trying to figure out how to effectively move this project forward that is left us at a place that's just not acceptable to any of us,
Okay.
I think.
Right. Thank you, Craig. So like I said, the city will not commit to a planning commission date to give us one, but we kept pushing. They said tentatively the 17th of January. And only because I kept pushing with the fact that I need to know in advance, because it'll take at least 10 days for the installer to erect the story poles. So we need to be able to give him advance notice to mobilize and be ready and have 10 days to install. So even if we were to meet the schedule of January 17th, the latest that we could install the story poles would be December 15th in order to meet the 30-day requirements prior to a scheduled planning commission meeting. But it sounds like we're trying to push for a lot sooner than that, which we're ready on our end. The story pole plan has been completed. We've addressed all of the city's comments. We've reviewed the comments in a meeting with the city, but we have not received the actual approved plan as of yet. I did follow up with Renika earlier this week, and she said that she hopes to have comments back by the end of this week. We'll see. Okay, moving on to entitlements. This is where there's a lot going on. So if something's not clear, feel free to interrupt me and ask questions. As Carl indicated, we submitted our CDP application to the city of Malibu on December 17th of last year. We're nearing up a year ago. We received the first incomplete letter from the city of Malibu 35 days later on January 21st. The district issued responses to that first incomplete letter 34 days later on February 24th. And keep in mind that when I mention these dates, it seems like we're taking a while to respond. But in this particular first letter, we received 13 comments. And it's not just clarifying comments. Some of these required actual studies or surveying that takes time. It's not something that I can just get our team and say, give me a response by end of the week. It doesn't work that way. We had to do a photometric study. We had to do surveying, in addition to responding to various other clarifying questions. So that was just, and they gave us normally 45 days to respond. We responded within 35 days. And then on on March 3rd, we received a separate incomplete letter from the geotechnical, from the geologist, from the city of Malibu's geologist, and we argued their comments. And on the 21st of March, they released a revised sheet, and then we addressed those comments on the 24th. So just 3 days later. And it was just one comment at the end of the day that we were able to remove all other comments. They forget, for some reason, the city forgets that we are governed by Division of State Architect. Certain things don't apply to the city. And we were able to argue that, and those comments were removed. We went to the Environmental Review Board, which was another hurdle that we were not expecting. It required a lot of studies, documentations on May 5th. And then on June 15th is when we received the second incomplete letter, which was 111 days from our last response of February 24th. So they went from February 24th until June 15th before releasing their second incomplete letter. That added an additional 11 comments. Most of them were minor revisions. And now they added some new requirements because as part, as you know, we had 5 portables that we were going to relocate at Juan Cabrillo that were previously used by the middle school. We relocated those to the former Building G footprint at the Malibu Middle High School site, and didn't think that that would require a CDP. So it was a simple relocation of the buildings. They were going from an asphalt pad to an asphalt pad within the same site. And we learned quickly from the city that that was not the case. They wanted a separate CDP, or in this case, they added a lot of scope into this particular CDP and added additional hurdles for us. We received additional comments from the city on June 16th, June 23rd, and July 7th, via email in this case, not your typical letter, but additional comments that they forgot to include in that incomplete letter. And then the district responded to those comments and the second incomplete letter 36 days later. So we addressed everything by July 21st, with the exception of one comment. We didn't include the story pole plan at that point because we were still trying to find a company that that would meet City of Malibu requirements. On September 1st, 42 days later, we resubmitted our incomplete letter, basically the same comments. The only thing is we added the story pole plan, which, like I said, has not been approved to date. We received additional city comments on October 4th, and the third incomplete letter came in 34 days later on October 5th. This particular letter has an additional 11 comments, now requesting additional information from outside agencies. So for example, they wanted us to go to the state fire marshal to request to confirm that proposed project meets fire code defensible space requirements. They also mentioned that we were likely scheduled to go back to the environmental review board since we had updated our ESHA plans. We were successful in arguing that, and fortunately we don't have to go back to the ERB, but we still had to respond to these comments. We issued responses, the district issued responses to the third letter 20 days later on October 25th. So these are just the comments for CDP. Keep in mind, we have done a similar process for the specific plan and public works, and which is it. I mean, it would take probably another hour just reviewing the back and forth with the city on that. Let's see. Okay, moving on. We were finally able to have a hearing of the specific plan at the May 31st Planning Commission meeting. This was strictly for the specific plan and certification of the environmental impact report. It did not include, of course, the CDP for phase one. They removed that. So we were able to, at least the district pushed also to separate that. The way the city was treating it is that it was all commingled. Basically, they were planning to take the specific plan, the certification of the EIR, and the CDP, which was holding up the specific plan process. The district was successful in convincing the city to separate that as well. And we were able to get that scheduled for May 31st. On June 13th, we had our first reading of the specific plan. However, the city on June 9th decided to pull the item from the agenda. So we did not make that June 13th scheduled meeting due to traffic issues that, according to Public Works, had not yet been resolved.
And Noemi, remind me, but my memory is that was after we had gotten buy-in from planning that everything was a-okay and we could go forward. Then at the last minute, they said, oh, wait a second, we forgot to tell you this stuff needs to be fixed. Is that about right?
Correct. That is correct.
Thank you.
The last time we had heard from Public Works was back in March, where we responded to them. We didn't hear anything more, and even the city confirmed that everything was good to go. But then, just like I said, on June 9th, we heard from the city pulling the item because they heard from Public Works that they had additional comments that had not been resolved. They just had not sent them to us. So on June 16th and June 18th, we had follow-up meetings with Public Works to quickly address those comments. We had all of our consultants be part of those meetings, along with Public Works Department and Rob DeBow, just trying to get this resolved as soon as possible so we can make the next city council meeting. We submitted our responses to Public Works on July 1st. And we were able to have the first reading of the specific plan on July 11th at the city council meeting on July 11th. However, we had to redo the first reading. It was reintroduced on August 8th, which we didn't know until days before the August 8th board meeting, that the city was going to re-agendize the item and reintroduce it to city council due to the coastal commission's last minute changes to the Isha restoration plans. So because of that, we had to resubmit, or it had to be reintroduced basically on August 8th. The specific plan requires 2 readings. The first reading was originally planned for August 8th. And then the second one was supposed to take place on September 12th. That meeting was canceled because of due to a power outage. That pushed the second reading until September 27th. So as you can see, we've lost several months here because we went to the Planning Commission May 31st. The first reading should have been June 13th. The second reading should have been July 11th, and we would have been done. That would have pushed the specific plan to Coastal Commission on July, a week later. That's how long they took after the second reading for the city to push it through Coastal. So we've lost from July, basically July 11th up until September 27th, when it finally was approved as a second reading. A week later, like I said, the city pushed the specific plan to Coastal Commission. A couple of weeks later, we requested a meeting with Coastal Commission and the city to try to see if we can help answer any questions, help expedite their review process. And not the city, but Coastal came back saying that they are still conducting the review. They're going to need more than their typical 10-day review period. They asked for 30 days. And they said that they are not ready to meet with us until after they conduct their 30-day review.
And when does the 30 days come up?
November 4th.
It's Monday, right?
November 4th. It's Friday. I told you Monday, Craig, but I was mistaken. It's
Okay,
this
so
Friday.
it's 2 days from now. The other thing,
Correct.
just so the nomenclature doesn't fool anybody, we had 2 first readings and then a second reading. So it took us 3 readings to have 2 readings over
Yep.
a 3-month delay from what the expected timeline was.
And for the logistics of that, everybody, a municipality has to have 2 readings of an item before they can introduce it as law, I guess is how you refer to it. But there has to be legally 2 readings.
It's because of the zoning change. That's right.
But, I'd like to make reference here is all this that Noemi's going through. The part that bothers me as I look at the screen, it's May 31st to September 27th. This was supposed to be last November through March. So I
Right.
realize all the delays that keep happening here now, but we had a city staff member installed in our group to make sure that schedule that we've had for 3.5 years was accurate and we could do that. And my frustration is, why wasn't this done in March? So that the wild card, which is the California Coastal Commission that we just don't know, had a chunk of time so we could still start in November. They told us they needed 3 to 6 months. If we'd been done in March, we'd be breaking ground yesterday, but we're not. So I'm going to give the floor back up. Noemi, go ahead.
And in terms of Coastal Commission approval, the specific plan and the LCP amendments, again, is to be determined. We're going to follow up as at the end of this week to see where they are with their comments, and we can schedule that meeting for as early as next week. But what we're hearing from the city right now has nothing to do with Coastal, but even from the city, they're saying that while I keep pressuring basically Renika, our planner, on a weekly basis to get a response or status on our submittals, the typical response is, that they're prioritizing fire rebuilds over this project. They're still trying to expedite it, but they are, in fact, that is the direction from City Council and Planning Commission to prioritize fire rebuilds.
Which
I
to
think
be
Marianne
clear-
has raised her hand.
Yeah, to be clear, nobody here is saying that we believe this project should have a first priority over the.
No, of course not.
Of course, we fully support that. We just need this to be shoulder to shoulder to that.
Correct.
And the resources be deployed, because again, as a reminder to everybody, this is Malibu residents' money for a Malibu high school project for Malibu students, Malibu property values, Malibu education, Malibu schools. This is a government entity of Malibu trying to do a project in Malibu for Malibu. So that needs to be shoulder to shoulder, absolutely with the needs of the people who have to get their houses rebuilt, of course.
Of course,
So Craig,
but keep
before,
in mind, just really quick, Steve, keep in mind that the city, even early on, back when Bonnie Blue was still at the city, they committed to bring Joyce back to assist with the process of just the phase one CDP, the entire entitlements process, to focus her on this project, to free up obviously the rest of the planners on those very important fire rebuild projects. Joyce came on board for maybe a few meetings and then she just disappeared. We just hasn't been
So-
part of any of it.
so I think we need to let Mary Ann talk, but it is true that the city is having staffing issues. I spoke
Right.
to Steve McClary, I think earlier this week, and he said, you know, fire rebuilds naturally are number one. You guys are number 1A. So they're saying the right things, that we're, you know, shoulder to shoulder, as Craig would say, but we're not seeing that. So I think maybe we could have Mary Ann chime in.
Yeah, guys, before,
You muted yourself.
hang on one second, Mary Ann. By the way, I cannot see Noemi. If people raise their hands, let me know. I can't see it. I'm not seeing everybody. But I just want to make sure that the staff and Craig and Steve are finished here. And I would very much like to hear committee members' reactions on this. Mary, can you hang 1 second?
Sure.
Steve, Craig, anything you'd like to reference, or Noemi, are you finished here?
Yeah, I'm finished with the slide.
Steve or Craig, do you want to have me say anything? I just want to give you a last shot, and then I'd definitely like to hear the committee members one by one, see their reactions to this.
Well,
So, I mean,
does somebody want to frame the conversation? Because there's some very specific things we're thinking about here. Like we've come to the end of the rope of Lucy and the football, to badly mix a metaphor. Like we really, 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 really need to change the pattern, because we're out of ability to continue to, we're past out of ability to continue to be patient, and the dollars have now come into play so that we literally can't afford this sort of, yes, we're going to work on that. Oh, sorry. Oh yeah, we're going to work on that. Oh, sorry. We're out of room for that. So that's what we're meeting about today, in my mind, is to talk about what we as the senior committee of Malibu Brown Act board appointed people, what action do we take to work for the residents of Malibu to get this project executed as we promised them it would, which is efficiently and with us acting in their best interest, responsibly, carefully, and you know, efficiently and respectful of their money and their trust, all of it. And we're at the point where we've got to have a real serious conversation about this can't go on.
Thank you, Craig. Mary Ann, definitely like to hear from each one of the committee members. Mary Ann, please, you have the floor.
So when they keep sending these incomplete letters, what exactly are they highlighting? And now that the responses have been turned in for this third one, what are they saying about being able to get on the next planning commission hearing? Because
So like,
what's the schedule for planning commission in the next 2 months?
so I followed up with Renika on Monday. Actually, on Tuesday, I gave her a week after our last submittal, which was 2 weeks ago. And I felt that a week was reasonable, considering that the last comments were just mostly clarifying questions. And yet she said that she didn't say much, basically saying that she hopes to have a response by the end of this week. But we hear that often, is what I mentioned earlier.
Right. So the short answer to your question, Mary Ann, is all they've said is, we'll get back to you.
Yes.
Okay. And then the second part of your question about when we get on the agenda, I think that's what you were getting at, right? Like, when can we take it and when are the next meetings? You know, at this point, they keep saying, well, every agenda is full and the committee doesn't want to have, the commission rather, doesn't want to have separate meetings. I think I'm hearing from Carl, at least, your ask is going to be, schedule a special meeting, just focus on this, hear it in one meeting, don't continue it to a next meeting, and let's get this thing done.
Yeah,
Does
very
that answer-
specifically for me, I'd like to do this as a special meeting as well, because if we get a brand new planning commission in January, I can't fathom a project of this size ought to be, if we get 2 new planning commissioners, I can't imagine this is something they'd want to digest in the first meeting. That's not very effective. So, I mean, logistically, I'd like to get this in December specifically so we can have folks who've been on the commission for at least 2 years and be able to tackle this. And we've already been working on it.
Well then, okay, so I've got a follow-up question on that, just for the planning commission. Is this going to require a review by the city council, or is this only going to go to city council or coastal if there's an appeal? Meaning, is the planning commission decision the final one unless an appeal is filed?
My understanding
right.
is specifically exactly like you said, unless there's an appeal filed, it's just the planning commission. Is that correct, Steve?
It is the specific plan. I mean, yes, as to the CDP, that's my understanding as well. The planning commission has the final say. If they say yes, and someone wants to challenge that and appeal it to the city council, they can. If they say no, and we want to challenge that and appeal it to the city council, we can. There is one additional thing, which is when the specific plan and specifically when the LCP amendments get approved by the Coastal Commission, that then needs to come back to city council for certification, and we can't start construction until after that certification. Now, there's logic in that, but the first time that we heard about that was, I think, last week, right, Noemi?
Yes, last week.
That's not, and again, it's not to say that it's wrong. It's just, once again, it's something that, oh, by the way, we forgot to mention.
A new hurdle
that's come
that
back.
we were not
Yeah.
accounting for.
Well,
Correct.
that's a standard thing. I mean, that's
Exactly.
That's
No, and I-
unfortunately, just because the school district may not have known that, that is a standard rule that's required on anything. And that's just
agreed.
to certify in case there's any
Yeah.
changes that the coastal commission makes and
Right.
everything else.
Sure, but
And-
that
and
would
we
be
have-
a useful bit of information to be transmitted as well
Mhm.
in the multiple months that we've been having these conversations. There's also a second piece about that, which I think Steve's going to speak to now.
Well, I don't disagree. I am going to give a little bit of, protection to the staff and such, in as much as, the LCP, the city's been dealing with it since 2004. This has happened on multiple things when there's some type of thing that the Coastal Commission has to sign off on. But I did have another question about Coastal Commission. Have we gotten any comments back from them since they received?
No. Like I
nothing,
said,
an
they're scheduled.
acknowledgement?
They did. They acknowledged saying that it's going to take more than their typical 10-day review. So they asked for 30 days, which it's coming up around November 4th, on November 4th.
Okay, so we should get a letter from staff giving feedback on to where their position, where staff's
That's the
position
goal.
and their recommendation for
Right.
commission. Okay.
Right.
All right, I'll wait for other people to ask other questions.
Hey, Marianne, one thing to say, I certainly don't, and I don't think anybody here wants to make this at all personal or problem solving. We've tried really, really, really hard to say, okay, yes, now we can get it next time. We're out of rope. I am deeply concerned that the promises that I made to the voters of Malibu and many people on this call made cannot be honored in an environment where we simply can't get this done in this way. So it isn't about who did what to whom. It's about how the heck do we get this finalized and moving forward, knowing that DSA has already approved it, right? So we're just stuck in this local situation. How do we get this moving so we can fulfill on the promises we made to the voters? And also against the context that don't worry, it'll be okay next time is no longer an answer that certainly I can accept. We need some very specific timelines, some very specific dates, and we need to get this done. And we need to figure out how to do that in the context of everything that's been mentioned before.
I don't disagree with you, and I hear exactly what you're saying. I just, am just making sure that it's not all one-sided. They're. Let's hear from the rest of the committee. Any questions that they've got?
Please, any other committee members like to speak at this moment? I'd like to hear from you all.
Karen's raising her hand. Just start talking, Karen.
Okay. Hi, guys. I appreciate how hard you've been working on this, and I can't imagine the frustration. I'm super frustrated just listening to all the channels and to hearing like Noemi, 111 days of them responding to us. Can we not just request an emergency planning commission meeting, but can we force it to somehow happen, especially in light that they'll be changing people on the planning commission, and this would mean huge delays? And doesn't the council have a duty to our city, you know, for us to be wasting $1 million a month? Can the mayor or head of planning commission or somebody step in to help move this along? It just seems like an obscene hemorrhage of cash that is obvious, but is there like a side door that we can get into somehow, whether it's a legality or somebody can ask or push for it to get through? Like, can we get this other meeting so we can get the story polls up and at least get it done as quickly as possible before we
So I think-
switch?
And I think that's really, that's the communication that would come from this committee, and it would be directed to multiple groups, I guess. I mean, it needs to speak to the community at large, because you guys right now are the most, as of right now, the most knowledgeable residents of Malibu about this. And I believe that there's very broad and deep support for this project. So your voice in putting this out there gets it to your fellow community members and helps hopefully get them to apply that pressure. The other audience for this communication are the elected officials that you're talking about, or appointed in the case of the planning commission. And I think that you as a committee can, in specific and strong terms, say, look, this is what we expect. This is what you should do. And of course, ask them to do it. Now, can we force it? I mean, I understand that, no, we can't technically force it. So, you know, I mean, it's going to get agendized when the city agendizes it, but I think you as a committee have the right to strongly ask for that. Does that answer your question, Karen?
Yeah, I guess what I don't understand is we're doing this for our community. So how are
Yes.
people who work for our community not doing everything possible? I'm not talking about our committee. I'm talking about the people at the planning commission. I don't know if the city council, if there's more they could do. I know I'm friends with the mayor. I'm friendly, and I'm sure he will do whatever it takes to get this through. And I think our council wants it. I think the holdup sounds like it's more planning commission, not city council. I don't want to shame them. I don't know if that would be the answer, like taking out a one-page ad and like the Malibu Times, like demanding, like I don't know what would speak to them to get it done. I don't know who the people are. Maybe Marianne could speak to it better, or you, Craig, or
So
Carl.
that's great, Karen. That's really helpful. And I think the other piece of this is there needs to be a very specific list, which I think is 3 or 4 items of this needs to be done, this needs to be done, this needs to be done, this needs to be done. We're not very far from being to the end of this, but not very far is still looking like 3 or 4 more months, assuming it comes in as it's scheduled to, or as it's predicted to, which has not been the case in the past. But I think there are some very specific things that we could list to say this needs to be done, and we believe it could be done. You know, the story polls need to be approved, right? And then the planning commission needs to, within 30 days or whatever the timeline was, I think it's 30 days after the story polls are in, then the planning commission needs to have an emergency meeting on or about 30 days. And then another thing that Steve hasn't mentioned is we were hoping, by way of expediting the coastal commission eventual approval, to get the city council to approve conditionally, to accept conditionally the coastal commission's acceptance of our plan, such that if the coastal commission doesn't add conditions, it's pre-approved by the city, so we don't have that additional 2-week or month delay while the city has to have sort of a pro forma meeting to accept what coastal has done. So there are all these things that we know could really get this done in a way that it doesn't in any way shortchange the review, but it just makes it happening at the earliest possible date. So I think staff can create that template. And then the question is, what do you guys, how do you think it is best to get the focus on that template so that everybody just gets this done? And
Right, and real quick, with the election around the corner, is that something we ask the city council to do now? I think city council will support us building the school as quickly as possible and not hemorrhaging cash for the tax dollars of our community. But do we do that?
By and large, the city council has done what you just said. They have been supportive and pushed this
I'm
forward
sure.
when they can. As far as when the ask is made, there's a couple of things that I think we as a district would like to have done first, which is I'd like to get the response from the Planning Commission on our most recent submittal. I'd like to get the response from the Coastal Commission on that submittal. So until we have those things, I would recommend the committee not issue this communication, but I still think you're talking early next week. And
Like, can we go sit in the office and wait and say, can you please respond to us? Like, is that a thing?
it's a
I don't know
thing.
that it would be effective.
I would not
Go
recommend that.
every morning?
Yeah, I don't think that would help, to be
That
honest.
sounds like
Okay.
civil disobedience, Karen. I like it fundamentally.
Yeah, I'm there.
Like,
I'll
I
sit.
wanna
if you
sit
take
here.
muffins- If you take muffins, it might be taken differently.
I would not recommend that.
Yeah, understood.
Yeah,
I-
nor would I.
I
ahead.
wonder, I just feel like everybody everywhere is on such a short bandwidth, and there's so many old reverberations of past relationships that shouldn't affect, but they just do. I don't know if maybe there's some way to craft, like, you know, we're really, as a school district, we're really trying to do things differently, and here's what we've done over the last 2 years, and here's what we need in this next time. I'm not saying we haven't already done this, but I think maybe doing it one more time, kind of spelling it out, and then the timeline, Craig, you talked about, and then maybe leading, instead of with the people who've been saying this all along, like with Karen and with Lisa and with me, just saying, you know, that we have teachers involved and we have parents involved. And because what I've heard in those planning commission meetings is they haven't looked at it until right before, and then they feel like it's so much, it's overwhelming, and they're afraid they're going to be criticized if they don't know everything when they make a decision. And I think that's been part of the problem. So I don't know how to kind of tackle that way. Like, we're here to do whatever we can to make it understand, and here's the timeline, here are the impacts, and acknowledging the fires and trying to work alongside. Like, this gets us out of your hair so that you can go back and concentrate on that, and it will save the city $15 million if we do it now. I don't know if that's possible, and I say all that, and there's no way I can write that letter right now, so I can't do it.
What else are you doing?
I don't know, hanging out. But I just wonder if something like that could be helpful to acknowledge the fears and acknowledge the concerns and acknowledge the realities, and just kind of say, yes, and this could help you here, this helps us here, it helps our city here. And I'm not saying we haven't already done that, but maybe one more time in a new way.
There's also a piece of this, right, which is just the will to get it done. Like, it's a mental frame change from, yes, we'll do it in the normal course of affairs, to no, if there's an earliest date we can do it, we will do it on that earliest date. We will find a way to make this happen. And that is an enormous difference for the kids of Malibu. I don't believe that the delays that we're experiencing in the normal friction of human life are worth the cost to the kids of not just getting it done. And that's kind of what I would love city council as a whole to say is, you need to get this done at the earliest opportunity. You need to find a way to get it done. You need to have the will to get it done. If you can get it done by the 12th of whatever month, get it done by the 12th. If that's the earliest date, we expect it to be on the 12th. And that's the piece of this puzzle. Like there's a huge urgency on our side that I think we need everyone in the equation to share. And and so, you know, maybe this committee crafts that letter. This is a recorded meeting, you know, public meeting. So your ideas are memorialized. Maybe this group puts together a subcommittee to craft that letter, working with district staff and get it out as soon as possible. I think Steve's right. We need to hear back from the planning department, which we expect to be this week. We need to hear back from Coastal, which we expect to be this week. Once we know that, we'll know how loud or not loud. Maybe the planning department accepts our whatever it is. Maybe they accept that this week, and maybe the planning department, the Coastal comes back and says we're, you know, so maybe the loudness of it could be muted. But I think you guys need to be in communication with the public about this as soon as you understand where we are with those pieces. That would be my recommendation.
Great, thank you, Craig. I believe Lisa has to go soon, so I'd like to hear what she has to say before she goes.
Yeah,
Yeah,
hello everyone. I personally, as a teacher, I know staff is anxious to, you know, get the building complete and start the kind of like the regrowth of our schools, right? Like we've declined so much, and we really, you know, see this new building as like kind of the jumping off point of encouraging, you know, Malibu families to choose Malibu schools and stay in Malibu and use the public schools. So I know the staff would be behind any way to support the approval that we want to get this going, right? We know how important it is. I also have a 6th grader at the middle school this year. So on a personal level, like I was expecting my 6th grader to roll into the high school. So as a parent, it's really disappointing to see that might not be true from what we were told. And I know, like, Craig, you know, you put your voice out there that this would happen, you know, and I've said the same thing, like these 6th graders are rolling in. So definitely can be a squeaky wheel. Just need the guidance on what channels to use that in. Do we need staff support? Do we want parental support of the 6th grade parents to kind of start making some chatter? Just, you know, if you guys can help guide us on that, I'm definitely happy to be a part of that.
Thank you, Lisa. Yeah, I think that's kind of part of the point today is I think this is our responsibility, as Craig says, as the only school district officially appointed Brown Act body, to make sure we disseminate to the community what's happening, what's happened, and what we need to happen in the future, and look for help anywhere we can possibly get it. So what my interest is here is for this group to get a missive out to the community, out to the city council, out to the planning commissioners and the whole city staff, and let them understand we are no longer able to meet what we've told the community we're going to get because of all these delays. We did everything we possibly could to try to avoid these delays by starting years ago. And we're very concerned about the costs and our ability to actually deliver the school as we told everybody we would. And we already know it's going to be late. So that's my input is I'd like to submit that. We'd like to put that out. And as Craig references, I think there were 3 specific things we want to ask for. Story polls now, the special planning commission meeting in December. And Craig, what was the third piece?
Pre-approval or the conditional approval of Coastal, I think.
Yeah, I think that was it. Is that correct, Steve? Is that what we had? Was that the third piece?
Yeah, there's some precursors to the story poll too. We also need the planning department to accept the plan too.
Okay.
Yeah, and they've got to review it, but I mean, the idea would be, yeah, once we get approval of the CDP, it needs to be scheduled. And of course we need the story poll plan in order to put in the story poll. So that's why you were thinking of that as a sequence. But the ask is set a meeting as soon as possible, which is going to be 30+ days.
Yeah.
To conditionally approve phase 1 CDP.
You know, I'd love to get this press release that we generate out as soon as we possibly can. I think there's quite a bit of noise between now and next Tuesday that may make it not land so well. And I believe that we're due to get some, I know we're getting Coastal Commission info back on Friday. And I believe the city is due to come back to us. Renika can clarify that. I think the city's due to come back to us on Friday as well about the CDP and where we stand, if it's complete and if we can move forward. But I would like this group to be ready to go next week with some sort of missive letting the community know where we are. I mean, I think no matter what happens with those elements on Friday, with the city and the coastal, I think we need to let the community know where we are, what's happened, and our delays and our overrides because of what's happened in the process. And I just want to get everybody's input on that. Do you agree with that? And do you agree with we sending this out as a from the committee? I mean, I can do it probably independently with just my name on it, but I'd sure like it to be from
No,
the committee.
I'm in for writing a letter and helping get it out and whatever needs to be done.
I
Yeah.
need to see the incomplete letter that we last got, so I can see what items are on there.
I'm happy to
before
send
I can
you
do that.
all of them. Absolutely.
Okay.
And then what are we looking at best case scenario if we were to get like things back on track, like to tell the families that we're, you know, what's the delay right now?
Unfortunately, we're beyond August 2024. We can't because of the delays. We've already
Understood.
lost the
Jan,
Yeah,
so
but
I
she's
mean,
asking what-
is it a 1 year
We're-
delay? Are we 6 months
we're
delay?
pushing, depends on when we start. We're really pushing for a January 2025 opening. But that's extremely aggressive because in talking to CW driver or contractor, they can potentially be done with the building by the end of mid to end November, but that doesn't give us enough time to move everyone over just the holidays. Remember, we initially had planned for at least 2 months of moves because we have to bring in new furniture, move contents. We need to do set up computers, phones. It's a bit unrealistic, but we can certainly explore still the January 2025, but it's looking more like August 2025 at this point.
Right, so Lisa, the short answer, if somebody asks you that question, is at best, it would be January 25. It's very likely it's August 25.
Correct. Yeah,
And
I would hate to promise something that we can't meet.
And recognize everybody, this is a public meeting we're in right now. This is now officially public information.
Can I just make a I just want sorry, hi everyone, Jennifer Smith. I just want to make clarification that we understand our finances at the end of this. If we're pushing it to August of 25, the money still exists for the project that exists to be complete, and that when is the point of no return?
I'm not sure. What do you mean by when is it? When are we too far gone to be able to afford the project?
Yes.
We're super close right now.
Mhm.
You know, this is from what we've been told from our contractor. So far, this is about an $8.1 million impact. We've also had some additional costs related to the water treatment. What do we call the wastewater treatment? You know what I mean?
Right, wastewater treatment plant and the
secondary treatment or-
bioswale,
Okay.
Post wastewater and stormwater.
stormwater,
Well,
correct?
yes, those are separate. We have to put in, as part of the project, we have to put in a wastewater treatment plant because of the fact that we've demolished the building and left the site open. We have to put in the stormwater treatment. So they're separate, but both costs. So those, I think, were about $1.5 million, if I remember correctly. And then, like I said, the delays are somewhere in the neighborhood of 8 million. We didn't have a ton of contingency. This will basically eat it up. And of course, if there's if there's issues during construction, and let's be honest, there's always issues during construction. So we do need some additional capacity there. So Ms. Smith, the answer is it's already right on the edge. If the project were delayed beyond April, I would say we're at risk of not being able to afford to complete the project, which obviously we would work out before we start, but that's where we are.
I just wanted that to sort of be clear. I appreciate that. Thanks.
No problem.
Jen, that was a great question. I'm curious, Noemi, you said earlier that Bonnie Blue asked somebody to be on and she came on for a while and
Joyce.
Joyce. So
Mhm.
do we need to reestablish communication both with Rainika and with Joyce, and then maybe even the planning commission, like not expect them to come to another meeting, but invite them? I don't know, who would there be key people in the city that would be good to have some kind of communication back and forth?
Stacy, to be clear, Renika's on this call right now. I definitely have to
Right.
speak. I'd like to hear
Oh,
from.
Rainika, I was looking for your name and
I
couldn't
was
see
just
it.
gonna
I was
say-
on my phone. I'm so sorry. I've been looking, it was at the bottom, so I couldn't see you or Sherry.
Yes, you came in a bit. So please finish your thought. And then I'd like to give Renika the floor and offer some of her wisdom as well.
Right, but just how to provide support, because I think the city is really, to Mary Ann's point, strapped. And so how to provide support from us to not add more, like who could we bring in to kind of help with some of that?
And Stacy, so you know, I mean, I believe all of us recognize that. We recognize how strapped the city is and how short-staffed they are in the process. We just, as a group, we're responsible for doing this financially as prudent as we can, being as on time as we possibly can. And right now, we're screwing up both of those things. So I think we need to let the folks of Malibu understand why and how this is as such. So Lisa, are you still here? Karen, one last thought, and I'd definitely like to hear from Renika afterwards. Either one of you, I can't. A little bit of this, maybe.
Carl, you cut out there for a minute. Can
Yeah.
you say that last part again? You were-
Sorry, yeah, I was just looking to see if Lisa or Karen had any last thoughts. Stacy's had her chance, and I know Marianne has been specific about what she'd like to see. I'd definitely like to hear from Renika, hear your thoughts. And Renika, I know you came in later. Maybe Steve, maybe you can give her a quick oversight of what's been shared with the committee, just so she knows what she's walking into, just information-wise.
Sure. Hi, Renika. So we basically reviewed Noemi gave us an update on the project, which started with, we went right from item 4A to 4B kind of seamlessly. So we started with just an update on the project from the school side. We've gotten DSA approval. We're ready to get into construction. Then we talked about the entitlements, went through because the last time this committee met was before we started increment 1, went through the process of everything we did this summer to get increment 1 underway and completed. And then we moved on to did we talk about the specific plan? Anyway, we talked briefly about the specific plan, but then really got into CDP for phase 1, went through the timeline, which I think is Noemi's next slide here. And I think, yes. And then I think that's about where you came in, Renika. It was right when we started kind of the discussion and the comments from the committee members.
So is there and hi everyone, is there a specific question you'd like me to answer?
I don't know if there's a specific, I just let you, I wanted you to have an opportunity to speak. We're all obviously frustrated in the process and frustrated that we are expecting at least a 6 months delay at this point. And with that, an $8.1 million delay, plus I think there's some other costs that Steve hasn't been able to officially identify yet, but there's some on top of that. That's if we were to start at the earliest possible time. Those are the delays and the costs we're incurring and the delays in opening school. We're very, very concerned that it's going to be even longer than that and more expensive than that. And specifically, we are as a group, we're actually very concerned about the viability of even building the high school anymore as the costs continue to go farther along and the delays continue to happen. I think we have some specific requests. I know Marianne has a tentative interest in this. But the rest of us, I believe, we are going to make some specific requests to make sure that the story polls happen immediately. We're going to ask the planning commission to do a special meeting as quick as they possibly can. I guess there's a 30-day delay on that, but we don't want these delayed anymore, because we know that if we don't break ground in April, and everything I'm seeing right now makes that highly questionable, that we've got some major issues with the project. And we feel at this point, our group, it's our responsibility to let the community know where we are and what's happened so far. So, but I know you've been with us for a couple of years now, and I just wanted to get your thoughts on that. Maybe you can let the committee know what's happened from your perspective, from Malibu's perspective, delays, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, so this entire process, the planning department was aware that the specific plan and the required processing through the planning commission, the city council, and ultimately with the coastal commission certification process, that's like the big chunk of what needed to happen in order to pave the way for the phases to be implemented. So we focused our energies on expediting the processing of the specific plan to get it through the city's processes and up to the coastal commission, which was done in, I think, record speed, given everything else that's going on in the planning department. The CDP for phase 1 is mostly complete. There's a few items that I believe have been addressed. So we'll complete the review of that resubmittal and would have updated comments by the end of this week. I'm expecting for it to be deemed complete. We did have a meeting with Noemi and I believe a couple of other people from the school district's team about a couple of weeks ago, I think maybe 2 to 3 weeks ago, to review the latest set of comments. So that way, whatever was resubmitted would hopefully address those issues. I know there is a concern about the CDP going forward to the planning commission without having the regulatory framework established for that CDP. Certification by the Coastal Commission is required in order to build phase 1, primarily because of the reduced the setback and the extra height for the building. It's my understanding that in order to maximize efficient use of resources, there was a concern about prematurely taking that CDP to the planning commission when it can't be built to the Coastal Commission by the LCP amendment.
Actually, Renika, I spoke to Mr. McCleary last week, and he talked to Richard, and Richard committed that as soon as we get feedback from the Coastal Commission, which should be feedback from the staff letter that I think we're expecting Friday, they would be willing to take it forward on that and get it approved conditionally. So I know the normal process is to wait until we get approval, but and I know that's what you're saying we should be doing, but the city manager and planning director have agreed that once we get feedback, even without approval, we will take it forward.
I'm sorry, so I don't know if I made myself clear. I was talking about the ultimate implementation of phase 1 for it to be actually built. I believe.
Well, yeah, no, of course, we know we can't.
Yeah,
we know we can't build until it's approved.
I'm aware of the need to have an understanding of where the Coastal Commission stands on the LCP amendment, and that's really the main milestone we're looking for to have a comfort level in moving the CDP forward. Not that the Coastal Commission has to certify the LCP amendment, but to have an understanding of their comfort level with the status of, what the current draft of that LCP amendment is. If there could potentially be some changes that the Coastal Commission would require, that would affect the CDP. And so that's kind of why we're waiting to confirm where the Coastal Commission is with the draft language, and if we could comfortably conditionally approve the CDP contingent on their certification. And we are expecting comments. I believe the analyst from the Coastal Commission, I believe she said next week, if I'm recalling correctly.
She said no. She said November 4th.
November 4th. Okay. Yeah, I remember there was a request for additional time for them to complete their initial review of the LCP amendment, and I was expecting comments. I thought it was next week, but maybe I'm mixing it up.
I'm looking. No, I'm looking at it. It's. She says in no case later than November 4th.
Okay. Yeah, we did, planning staff did reach out to the Coastal Commission staff. I think it was the second week after having submitted the LCP amendment, just to kind of start the conversation going. We assumed they hadn't looked at it yet, but we thought, well, let's just kind of get the ball rolling to see if we can engage them in a conversation to kind of, well, one, put it on their radar, and two, expedite any review or communication we need to have. And we do have Joyce working on that. So she can focus most of her energies on the legislative piece. Because I have fire rebuild projects in my caseload, it's better to have Joyce kind of take the lead on the LCP amendment. But if we don't hear back from them soon, we will follow up to confirm their comments are forthcoming.
Oh, good. So Joyce is still working with you because we haven't heard from her in months. So we thought she was out of the picture.
No, she's working on it was always intended from back when Bonnie was the planning director to have Joyce take care of the legislative piece, which is the certification with the Coastal Commission.
So as long as we've got you here, one of the other things I understand is, and I think this is tied into what you were talking about, that we'd like to get the story polls up because that starts the clock on when the planning commission can meet. So that feels like another thing that if we could get the approval to put the story polls up, we could create a more advantageous timeline to be available if we're ready to go.
Not necessarily. It's the public notice that basically starts the clock ticking. Someone can place story polls up, but if the application isn't deemed complete, and if we haven't established a public hearing date, then polls can just be, I don't know if there's a misunderstanding about the role of the story polls. It's really the green light to move forward with the planning commission hearing. And then that establishes the timing for the story polls to be installed and certified.
So, but I thought the story polls had to be up for a minimum of 30 days before the meeting. So.
Yeah, well, the story polls have to be up before the public hearing notice is published. So that's really the timeline you're looking at, is the public hearing notification where the story polls have to be erected during that notification time.
So public hearing notification for a special meeting of the planning commission is short, though. Is that not a short window?
I believe it's 21 days.
That's 21 days.
The conditional use permit and the site plan, 21-day notice.
But
So-
if the story polls were up, that would take that out as a delaying factor for the rest of it, right? Because it seems like they're both gating factors. And what I sense is you're thinking we're not going to be able to meet in that timeline, so the story polls aren't on the critical path. But we really, really, really need to be having this meeting in December, not in January.
It's, to be honest, it's going to be contingent on where the Coastal Commission is with the LCP amendment. That's really the critical milestone that needs to happen before the item goes forward to the planning commission.
But if they come back and it's a relatively clean response, then
That's all we need. That's all we're looking for.
Good.
I mean, the next day, can we okay the story polls the next day and have them go up the day after? So we can get this moving for December?
Carl, the approval of the story polls is independent. The approval of the story poll plan is with planning right now. Once we have that approval, we as Renika said, we could put them up, I guess, as early as we
No,
want,
but I think what Renika's saying is she doesn't want to, there's no approval on that until the Coastal Commission staff notes come back,
No,
that she doesn't want to touch that until
Wait,
afterwards.
Renika, are you saying you won't, are you saying you won't approve the story poll plan until you get Coastal Commission approval?
No, that's not what I said.
Okay. I
like
didn't think
said,
so.
Yeah,
I didn't think so at all.
I was talking about getting the item notice for the planning commission public hearing, like a tentative date
Understood.
won't be set until we hear back from Coastal Commission.
I apologize, I misunderstood that.
Oh,
But
no
if
worries.
we can get the story polls up, that's one hurdle out of the way of being ready to go if and when Coastal come back, right?
Well, yeah, but story polls don't take a long time to install. Like if, you need like a week or two. So
But
if I would not
Look,
have.
a week or two matters.
But
I hear you, you're not wrong, but
and
it matters.
there's
What
a
I'm saying-
30-day delay, right?
Well, what I'm saying is it doesn't make sense to install story polls if we had not yet heard back from the Coastal Commission. So you can have polls up for a month or two. And if we haven't gotten the LCP amendment at a place where the planning department is comfortable moving forward, then poles would just be up and erected without a tentative date. That's kind of
So-
what I was trying to explain.
Right, so, but if we do get a relatively positive response from coastal, we would expect the city to move quickly to give us the approvals to put up the story poles.
That is correct. That is correct. And I have enough information to begin kind of drafting a template of the staff report. So it doesn't delay the planning department's process in preparing the item, but we can't get it on a path to the planning commission until we hear back from the coastal commission.
You mean the city won't do that?
That's my understanding, that we're not.
But it isn't that we can't, it's that the city won't. And that's fine. You have every right to do. I'm not questioning, but I want to be clear about this. The district's request initially was, we're willing to take the risk, take it forward now, get it approved by the planning commission, contingent upon coastal commission approval. And then eventually heard back from the city manager and planning director saying, we don't think that's a good idea. What we're willing to do, not the only thing we can do, but what we're willing to do is, once we get feedback, if we're in a position where we think, approval is likelihood without drastic changes, then we'll go ahead and notice and schedule that meeting. But that doesn't mean that is the only option. It means that's the option the city's willing to do, right?
I'm sorry, could you repeat the last thing you said?
It's probably not relevant. Let's go ahead to the next thing.
Can I ask a couple questions?
Please.
So one, this is to Steve. With the story poles, it seems like it's going to be a pretty large site, not unlike some large homes in Malibu, but it is going to be a very large
I think it's probably
installation
bigger
of
than most
story
homes, but you're right,
Yeah.
it's big.
What do you think realistically is the timeline for installation of those story poles once you have an approved plan?
I think it's like Renika said, it's a week.
That's, you think the contractor can get them at that? time?
No, they need 10 days.
It's 10 days to 2 weeks. It's very large.
Yeah,
Okay,
that's
fine,
what I
it's
was
2 weeks.
thinking. Okay.
Okay.
So.
I mean, it's tall.
And Renika, I guess your feedback initially on this, understanding what you're saying about wanting to get back feedback from the Coastal Commission, do we think that that's going to alter the location or size of the building and such? So, I mean, if we have a tentative plan for the story poles, because we don't want to be waiting 2 weeks while they're being installed and then have to wait then for any additional timeline for
Right, but
approval of
just to
them.
be clear, Renika is not saying she's waiting on approval of the story pole plan until we get until we get Coastal Commission feedback. It's just
I
that these
understand that.
happen to be at the same time. I know, but not everybody does, Marianne. So they just happen to be happening at the same time. I fully anticipate that Friday, when we get a response from Renika, we're probably going to have approved story pole plans. So we'll need that additional 2 weeks of notice to get them built. But I don't think, Renika, correct me if I'm wrong, I don't think you guys plan on withholding approval of that. Once you have an approvable set, you're approving it, right?
Yeah, the story pro plan, that's not being held up by anything, but only to review it to see if the comments have been addressed.
But that wasn't what my question was. My question was, is that we've got a story pole plan based upon where the placement of the building is right now.
Mhm.
And do we anticipate that any feedback we're going to get from Coastal is going to be that we're going to have to move the building?
I don't think so. The
Okay.
nature of the LCP amendment, I don't think it would affect the siting of the footprint of the building or anything. That would alter the location of the high school building, if that's what you're asking.
Right, so the
unless
story pole plan could be approved, it could be implemented, because we don't necessarily have to worry about that story poles are going to be relocated to a new location. So they could be built and they could stay in place.
Yeah, they could. But
Regardless.
I think the concern was more about the nature of any recommended changes to the specific plan that would alter the scope of the CDP for phase 1.
Right, and where they have to do with phase 1 are height and ESHA setback? Is that kind of
Those are
the,
the two things for the phase one, yeah, the ESHA setback and the height.
So the ESHA setback, though, to your point, Marianne, could become an issue because of course we have a road within what would be the 100-foot setback outside the 50 feet. And you know, if that moves, if you move it towards the building, it means you move the building. So we'd have to come up with, we'd have to deal with that if that were the issue. We don't anticipate that being the issue, but to your point, yeah, that could impact the design of the site.
right? Okay, if anybody else has questions, I'll wait to talk.
Okay, should I move on to the next slide? Okay.
Didn't know there was a next slide.
Neither did
Yeah,
I.
there is. There is. But we've already been talking about it. It's basically the schedule impacts. In order for us to make even the January 25th, the January 2025 opening as a potential opening, we would need to start construction in February. That's why it's unlikely. Now that if we keep the January 17th Plan Commission meeting and it's looking more like we would be starting in April, we've already lost that January date and it really pushes everything to August. So I want to make sure that that's clear, and that I don't know if the intent is to get this information out to the community as soon as possible, just because I know we're talking about communicating with Planning Commission, City Council, but there's a lot of parents who were promised a 2024 opening. I know for one, I was not at this year's, but last year's Get Your Stuff Day. I had a table, I had renderings, I had everything, and all of the sixth graders that were coming in, they, you know, all the parents were very excited. We were all excited that they were going to be moving into that high school in August of 24. So like I said, I don't know how we're planning to do that, but I think it's important that we get that information out as soon as possible to them as well.
And committee members, any other thoughts right at this moment? And then I'll try to wrap up what I'm thinking on this process and see if you're along with me. Noemi, please help me if you see any hands. I can't see it on my iPad.
Here, I would have to open. There we go.
I don't see anybody, Carl.
No.
I do have one clarifying. I just want to make sure on the noticing period, if Renika had mentioned a 21 days, is that just for a special period meeting for the Planning Commission? And or I just want to understand and make sure that we are quoting the right time periods for noticing of a public hearing. I don't want to get in trouble where we notice it and then it's incorrect and we end up getting delayed because of that.
The 21-day notice is because of it's for the discretionary request, the site plan review, and the conditional use permit. Was that your question, Marianne?
It was, and I just want to make sure that, you know, we're accurate on those, because I know in other projects not related to this one, sometimes something gets missed and a notice doesn't go out properly. And so I want to make sure we're dotting all our I's and covering all our T's and everything is known and we don't have any inadvertent delays.
Right. Yeah. I think, well, the notice, it's really about the scope of work and to make sure the discretionary request listed in the notice, which we know that already. So I don't think that would be affected.
Okay. Thank you.
No problem.
Okay, committee members, I'd like to kind of wrap this up as I think we've beaten this up pretty good. Here's what I'm looking for. We talked about a letter or at least an update to the community, where we are, what's happening, the issues we're running into, our lost August 2024. I think we owe that to the community at the best possible date, and the concern we have about even making that. And the cost that we've incurred by the delays due to construction escalation. I think we owe it to our community to put out something, and I think we need to do it soon. My personal opinion, I'd like to see it done before the end of next week. I don't know, maybe Steve, can tell me, we don't have a quorum here, Lisa had to go, but we can get some guidance on this letter. And whether this comes, I don't know if it just comes from me, written as chair of the FDAC or member of FDAC, or how we can exactly put this to title it. But I think the FDAC needs to give some communication.
Sure. So my understanding is that if you were a letter from the FDAC as an entity, then the FDAC as an entity would have to approve that, which would be a vote. And obviously you don't have a letter to get voted on right now anyway, and we haven't agendized it that way. So I think, Carl, what I've seen is you've gotten input from now a majority of the FDAC. I think you could, if you wanted to, get guidance from the remaining members on here to maybe stand up an ad hoc committee, subcommittee. Subcommittee that maybe 3 of you could get together and draft something, and the 3 of you could send it as whatever the chair, maybe past chair, and somebody else of the FDAC. But I think if it was to be from the FDAC, I think technically the committee would need to vote on it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. Since I've spoken to Karen on the side about this, and I've spoken to Lou on the side about this, if you guys want to have me or Karen or Lou on this ad hoc committee, because we currently only have 8 members, then that would have to be the ad hoc committee, or we would have to choose 3 of the other 5 members to do this. How do you guys feel about that? Input, please. Are you okay with that as Karen and Lou and I as an ad hoc committee drafting a letter that would come from, I guess it would then, based on what Steve's saying, it would have to come from Carl, I guess, would I be allowed to put my title as chair of the FDAC on that, Steve?
Can I,
Of course.
this is important enough. I would say get an ad hoc committee, draft it, and then have what I think could be quite a brief meeting of this committee next week to approve it. I think it needs to come with the full throated voice of this entire committee. I don't think you want to.
I think
I would prefer
right,
that.
Craig.
But Steve, what kind of notice do we need to have one of these meetings? Is it 72 hours?
It is.
Okay.
Well, you can notice it for Wednesday of next week or whatever, Thursday, whenever.
Yeah, we could notice it Monday for Thursday, and which would allow everybody to take a look at Thursday, and we could disseminate it next Friday. That would be a reasonable schedule.
You could notice it tomorrow for whatever day you want next week.
Don't we have to have some sort of agenda with the letter there?
No,
That's
you
not
have to have
the
an
way the
agenda.
board operates.
No. The answer is you have to have an agenda which lists the action item that will be taken, but not the underlying thing. So, I mean, we try to get our, say our presentations and so forth to the board in advance so that they have a chance to see it and so that it's public. But you're not technically obligated to do that. Your obligation is to notice that it is going to happen. So I would suggest, I mean, look, Tuesday, you're right. We could notice tomorrow for Monday or Tuesday. I have a feeling 2 members are going to be pretty damn busy Monday and Tuesday. So I'm going to suggest we not do that, and probably more of you, but I know 2 of you will be. I would suggest
we could do it for next
Friday
Wednesday.
Friday for Wednesday. Yeah.
Friday for Wednesday.
Do you need a quorum? Because Melissa just texted me. She could hop on if that helps. I don't think you do, but
Not I don't think to do what we're doing now. I don't believe.
I think you're right.
No, if we're gonna set an ad hoc group, that's my recommendation. But I'm looking for guidance from I guess so. Marianne and Karen and Stacy, who are on this call still, some guidance. Are you guys okay with Karen and Lou and I being an ad hoc committee that helps draft this letter that comes before the entire group next Wednesday to make suggestions, recommendations, removal of anything you like, adding anything like that we would then disseminate to the community next Thursday or Friday?
Yeah. Any chance Lou won't be able to do it? Should we pick a substitute just in case, or you think he's in?
I talked to him a couple days ago. He's been on the East Coast with family, but he's traveling home today. So I should be able to reach him tomorrow, and Karen and I then we can talk with Lou tomorrow and start the process of drafting a letter.
And Carl, did
And
he give you an
specifically,
indication that,
I'd like to make
Did he
sure
give
that
you an
Marianne's request for those letters, Noemi, please make sure you get those to Marianne.
I'll send those to her this evening.
Thank you.
What's all of-
Steve?
I was just gonna ask if Lou gave you an indication that he was willing to work on this type of thing.
Yes, we didn't speak in depth, but we spoke a little bit, and he said, I'm with my family, so I can't talk. And I said, will you help me draft a letter? And I gave him a basic concept, what I was thinking, and he said, yes, I'd help you with that.
Okay.
I mean, what do you think? Stacy's idea is not a bad one. Should we, I'm worried Stacy and Mary Ann might be a little busy in the next few days.
Well,
and maybe that
worst
doesn't
case,
work.
Carl, can't the two of us do it worst case?
Yeah, I guess we
It
could.
doesn't
Right?
have to be free.
Can we volunteer
Lisa.
Melissa or Lisa
Or
if they're not,
if they
like
want
as
to.
as a backup? Yeah, if they want
So,
to.
yeah, so I think that might be the way to do it, is if Lou can't do it, then, Carl, maybe you can reach out to some others. I think Carl's concern is having a Brown Act violation, because he has spoken to two of the members, and 4 would be 50% of the committee as it stands right now. So I think that was why Carl was saying, hey, it's kind of got to be the 3 of us or 3 of
Exactly.
them.
I didn't mean to do that to you guys. It just the references, I've already spoken to those 2 people about it. So, I mean, we could choose 3 others of the other 5. And I'm open to that. If you guys would like me as chair to do this and pursue this, I kind of have to stick with those 2 because I've already spoken to them about it. But I guess in generality is enough, though. I'm not sure. I don't want to mess with the Brown Act anywhere, guys. I've talked to him enough about it. I think that's not a good route to switch. And Karen, you're right. If Lou can't do it, you and I'll do it.
Yeah, I'm fine with you, Karen and Carl. Excuse me, Carl
Yeah,
and
Lou.
Karen, or Carl, Karen and Lou. It's fine with me.
Thank you, Mary Ann.
The good thing is this whole committee will be able to get back together next Wednesday, review what was discussed.
Precisely. Whatever we write's coming to you guys anyway.
And
Right.
staff, I think, is going to support you guys in writing the letters, so
No,
you'll have
they're on
help.
their own.
I also feel like this letter may, if we write it within this week, there may be an adjustment to it based on all the new information that Renika and the Coast Commission may share with us on Friday. It may adjust some of these things.
Yep.
And Renika, if you're here, are you here still?
Yes, I'm still here.
I have a question for you. As far as a special meeting and setting a special meeting, is that something the Planning Commission has to do? Is that something the city manager does? Is that something you do?
That's something that the admin have put to do at the direction of the planning director. And I guess in this case, ultimately the city manager. It's really the city manager call. I will say that the planning commission tends to take off time during the second half of December and the first half of January.
I expected that. That's why I'm trying to see if we can't do this around the 7th. I think the 17th is I want to say the 17th was a Monday or somewhere in there, but I guess it is that's why I'm trying to get these story polls erected and make the 30 days. It's somewhere around there. I guess we don't have to do it on Monday because that's actually, we can't, because that's either their regular meeting or city council. So it'd have to be a different day of the week.
Let me look up the long
Do-
range. to get the date.
Yeah, I'm looking at that right in the middle of December.
My
That I
gut
don't want to conflict with either their meeting or with
19th is a Monday.
19th is a Monday.
My gut is
Mm.
telling me that probably won't happen. But let me look up the dates just to, we know.
Renika, I get it.
Hanukkah.
And I have concern about that too, but that doesn't mean we don't want to try. I think we very much want to try and see if we can't get this, maybe we can beat that. Maybe it's Thursday the week prior.
Yeah,
When is Hanukkah this year? Anyone know?
I could look at my phone, I guess.
but this is where the headline of this meeting comes, which is it is really, 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 really important that the planning commission find a way to have this meeting in December, understanding they don't normally do it. They don't want to do it. They're busy. They worked really hard all year. We get all that. And we need to have this meeting this year.
December
And it
19th
says
is the first day.
It's the
Yeah.
18th is the first night.
Okay.
18th, okay.
18th is the first night. So I think we need to do it like the 16th.
Yeah.
And I
I'd like-
think we should anticipate that there could be
Wait,
members of
guys
the
are-
planning commission that are not excited about.
As soon as possible, and can we say it'll be short and sweet?
Okay,
And can we do it
okay.
Zoom?
Just one thing to point out,
Anticipation, interesting word, yes.
the 16th doesn't seem like it's right around the corner, but when you've got to have story polls up for 30 days beforehand, the 16th is right around the corner.
Yeah,
So
I recognize that.
You know, and we know they don't normally meet between the middle of December and the middle of January. That's $1 million. A month
So we
delay
need to
is
make
$1
this
million.
happen. We need to make this happen in the next few days and just.
And it's not just $1 million at this point. Steve. It's $1 million that may keep us from building the high school as we promised we would build it.
Right, and the reality is, look, if we got approval on December 17th, we're still not building until the Coastal Commission approves this and then the city council certifies it. But the real issue is when you have a brand new set of planning commissioners in there that are, well,
It's
maybe
not
an
fair.
entire new set. They're going
It's not fair to two brand
There's-
new planning commissioners
Right.
putting a project this size in front of them is not fair. I mean, doing that in January is just not fair. Here's your first meeting. So here's
there's-
80,000 square feet. That's not cool.
Yeah,
They're starting from zero on this and all of the other projects they have to consider. So it's not a 1 month delay. It's a
We're Malibu
multiple-month
residents
delay.
here. We recognize that we're not doing this and we're not going to do that to other Malibu residents.
Yeah,
That's my
and I'm-
personal thought on it.
and I'm sorry, but you know, as an elected official, if a meeting of this magnitude gets scheduled in a really inconvenient time, I will show the hell up, right? We need, you know, Jen and I have been to a number of meetings in the last 2 weeks, which were scheduled right now, and you needed to be there because it was really important. And every single board member made those meetings. So I don't, you know, in my mind, the fact that, gee, we don't normally do that is not a viable conversation. But we can cross that bridge when we come to it. But I just think that we need to be clear. And Renika, I hope you're hearing me say this, and I know you're not in charge and you can't make it done. But for an issue of this magnitude, we really, really expect people to find a way to have a meeting. And, you know, you guys can do everything to have it at a most convenient time. But the idea that we're going to take a month off because we normally do just doesn't, I don't think is going to fly for the community. It certainly doesn't fly for me.
I don't disagree with you. I'm just highlighting, you know, making sure that we
Yeah.
are aware that there may
And
be, you know,
Marion, we're up against it right now, and I'm nervous about whether we're going to build this damn school. I'm very concerned about it, and I recognize it might not be convenient, but as Craig says, we've lost the ability to have convenience. That's gone out the window. That's gone.
To your point, Carl, we should have had this meeting months ago.
Yep.
Months ago.
Yes. And so convenience is gone, is my opinion. And I would certainly have no problems asking the planning commission to show up on the 16th of December, you know, before the holiday. It is what it is, or whatever that date is, that Thursday or Friday. I don't have any problems asking.
I have a
and-
question. If we can meet next week on the 9th or 10th, get story polls up in a couple days, we can maybe meet with them around the 12th, you know, a little bit earlier. So
No,
I
the
say,
story polls are 10 days. Noemi said. 10 days.
Minimum,
Oh.
yes,
2
10
weeks.
days. Yeah.
And
Correct.
so
we should try to
best
meet the
case
9th.
scenario-
We should try to
Best
meet the
case
9th.
scenario is we get all this information, if I'm hearing this right, we get all this information coming in from Renika and staff and the CDP on Friday, along with Coastal giving their notes on Friday, and if they're not significant, possibly even Friday, that can be issued to allow the story polls to start the Monday after, which I think is the 7th to the 17th. We're looking right now, the 16th becomes 30 days. No, yes, 16 becomes 30 days.
Great. So we'll do the best we can. I don't think we can beat this any further here, but I think the message is clear. This is of the greatest urgency.
Okay, so the takeaway is the ad hoc group is going to write a letter which will be noticed tomorrow, that will come back next Wednesday, and we'll address the letter, and based on what happens between now and then, we'll issue the letter at the end of next week. Correct? Everybody in agreement? Any nays to that concept? Okay, I think we've beat this up already. Should we get back to the agenda? Is there anything else we need to speak to or connect to tonight?
I thought you guys might want to see what Monica-Malibu site looks like. I don't know if you've had a chance to peek through the
Oh
fence,
my gosh.
but let me play this.
Wow.
Look at that view.
Wow.
Incredible. I drive past it, but this vantage point is incredible. Very thrilling. Oh my goodness. I'm so
So
excited.
to tweak your watching of the video a little bit, that's also, and I'm sure this is what you were saying, no, I mean, that's also the view from the new high school building.
Correct.
Very
You're gonna
exciting.
have a beautiful view.
And are those the portables that need to get relocated?
No, those have already been relocated. The
Okay.
two that are left are the ones that are scheduled to be demolished, but we are currently using them to save costs because every penny counts at this point. One of the they're the former Boys and Girls Club portables. One of them is being used for the construction team and one for the construction manager team. That's where my Malibu office is currently, and sharing with Element.
It looks like a beautiful spot, Noemi. I think we should.
It
put a high
is.
school-
I love it. We're all fighting for which office has the view.
We should put a high school there for sure.
Yeah,
All
what
right,
a good idea, Carl.
Absolutely.
Let's do that.
All right, I like the idea. Seems like a good idea to me. All right, anything else to share, Noemi, Steve?
I don't have anything else.
Is there, or for the agenda, are we down to signing off? I think we've already started
Well,
our next meeting.
the next item was public comments. I did not receive any requests for public comments.
Do
So
we
our
have
future agenda,
Anybody in the room who might be interested in saying that? Anybody? Any hands up? I don't see any names that aren't part of our staff or group, but. All right, any hands up? Anybody has anything to say at this point before we wrap it up? It appears not.
Nope.
Unless I have anybody else, I will close the meeting because I guess I'm allowed to do that. All right, night, everybody. Thank you all.
Good night.
You,
Great
Carl.
seeing you.
Good night,
Thank
everybody.
you.
Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, everybody.
Everyone.
Good night.
Bye.
Good night.
Now I need to figure out how to save this.